Let's start with a truth most men won't admit. Women don't actually want men who are always emotionally available. I know that sounds shocking, especially if you've been told your best chance with a woman is to be the guy who listens, shares, and never shuts down. But here's the thing, being available 24/7 doesn't make you attractive. It makes you predictable, boring, and honestly, a little too easy. Think about it. Women are wired to be drawn to challenge, mystery, and confidence. When a man is constantly on call emotionally, he loses that edge. He becomes someone they like, sure, but not someone they desire. Desire isn't about comfort, it's about intensity, presence, and the ability to make her feel something deeper than just safety. This doesn't mean you should ignore emotions or be cold, it means there's a difference between being compassionate and being overly available. The guy who is always ready to fix her problems, answer every text immediately, or share every feeling at every moment is sending the wrong message. I'm safe, I'm predictable, I have no boundaries. That's a friendship vibe, not romance. Over the next few sections, I'm going to break down why being too emotionally available can actually kill attraction, what women really respond to, and how to balance showing your heart without losing your edge. By the end, you'll understand why some of the most confident, emotionally intelligent men are also the ones women can't stop thinking about, even if they don't see them all the time. 1. Emotional availability versus emotional attraction. This is where most men get confused, and this confusion costs them attraction. Emotional availability means you are open, supportive, understanding, and present. Emotional attraction, on the other hand, is what makes a woman feel drawn to you. The problem is this: men are taught that emotional availability automatically creates attraction. It doesn't. In fact, when emotional availability is given without restraint, it often does the opposite. Attraction is not built on how much you give, it's built on how you carry yourself. A man who is emotionally attractive has control over his emotions. He doesn't pour everything out at once. He doesn't chase connection. He allows it to grow. When you are always emotionally available, you remove tension. And tension is a key ingredient of desire. Women don't respond to emotional overflow. They respond to emotional stability. When a man is always ready to listen, always ready to reassure, always ready to explain how he feels, he becomes emotionally predictable. Predictability creates comfort, but comfort alone does not create desire. Attraction needs uncertainty. It needs space to breathe. This doesn't mean being distant or emotionally shut down. That's the mistake many men make when they hear this conversation. The goal is not emotional absence, it's emotional selectiveness. You choose when to engage deeply and when to stay grounded in yourself. That selectiveness communicates confidence. It shows you have a life, purpose, and emotional center that doesn't revolve around her moods. When a man is emotionally attractive, he doesn't react to every emotional shift. He observes, he stays calm, he listens without trying to fix everything. That calm presence is far more powerful than constant emotional availability. Imagine a man who answers every message instantly, reassures her every insecurity, and explains every feeling in real time. Now compare him to a man who listens carefully, responds thoughtfully, and doesn't rush to prove anything. The second man isn't cold, he's composed, and composition creates attraction. If you understand this difference, everything changes. Emotional availability is something you offer, not something you flood her with. Emotional attraction is something you create by how you manage yourself. One is about giving, the other is about being, and women feel that difference immediately. 2. Why being too safe kills desire. This is one of the hardest truths for men to accept. What makes a woman feel safe is not always what makes her feel desire. Many men believe that if they remove all uncertainty, all risk, and all emotional tension, attraction will naturally grow. In reality, desire works the opposite way. Being too safe means you are emotionally predictable, always agreeable, and never a challenge. You say the right things, you avoid conflict, you make sure she's comfortable at all times. While this sounds good on paper, it quietly removes the emotional spark. Desire needs movement, it needs polarity. It needs the feeling that something could be gained or lost. When a man becomes too safe, he becomes emotionally flat. There's no edge to him. He doesn't push back. He doesn't stand firm in his opinions. He doesn't create contrast. Over time, She stops seeing him as a romantic option and starts seeing him as emotional furniture, reliable, supportive, and invisible. Safety without strength creates boredom. Women are drawn to men who feel grounded, not men who feel harmless. A grounded man isn't reckless or unstable. He simply doesn't over-prioritize her approval. He can disagree without fear. He can say no without guilt. That balance between safety and strength is what keeps attraction alive. Being too safe often comes from fear. Fear of losing her, fear of upsetting her, fear of not being enough. Ironically, that fear is exactly what pushes attraction away. Desire grows when a man shows that his emotional center is inside himself, not in her reactions. This doesn't mean creating drama or playing games. It means allowing a little uncertainty, not explaining everything, not smoothing every emotional wrinkle, not rushing to rescue every feeling. Space creates curiosity. Curiosity feeds desire. Picture two men. One always agrees, always reassures, and never challenges her. The other listens, stays calm, disagrees when necessary, and doesn't rush to comfort. The second man feels safer long term, but more exciting in the moment. That's the paradox most men miss. When you stop trying to be perfectly safe, you become emotionally real, and real presence is far more attractive than emotional overprotection. 3. When listening turns into neediness. This is where many men accidentally sabotage themselves while thinking they're doing the right thing. Listening is powerful. It shows awareness, patience, and emotional intelligence, but listening becomes unattractive when it stops being a choice and turns into a strategy to be needed. When a man listens because he's afraid of losing her, she feels it immediately, even if she can't explain why. A lot of men don't listen from strength, they listen from anxiety. They lean in too hard, they overanalyze her words. They treat every emotional moment like a test they must pass. Over time, this creates pressure. Instead of feeling understood, she feels watched. Instead of feeling supported, she feels responsible for his emotional state. Neediness isn't about words, it's about energy. It shows up when your mood depends on how the conversation goes, when silence makes you uncomfortable, when you feel the urge to fix, explain, or reassure instead of simply being present. Women don't want to feel like their emotions control you. They want to feel that you can handle them. Men who are grounded listen differently. They don't chase meaning in every sentence. They don't interrupt to prove understanding. They don't turn her emotions into a problem that must be solved immediately. They allow space. That space communicates confidence. There's also a subtle shift that happens when listening becomes your main value. You stop leading. You stop expressing your own thoughts freely. You become reactive instead of intentional. Over time, she senses that the relationship revolves around her emotions, not mutual desire. Attraction fades quietly in those moments. Relatable truth. Many men are told that being a good listener is the key to connection. But no one tells them that listening without boundaries drains attraction. You are not meant to be her emotional container at all times. You are meant to be a man with your own emotional rhythm. When you listen from fullness instead of fear, everything changes. You stay calm, you don't rush responses, you don't need constant emotional closeness to feel secure. That calm presence is what makes your listening attractive, not the listening itself. Women feel safest and most drawn to men who don't disappear into their emotions, but also don't drown in them. That balance is rare, and when you embody it, you don't have to try to be interesting, you simply are. 4. Boundaries are more attractive than empathy. This part might sting a little, but it needs to be said. A lot of men hide behind empathy because they're afraid to have boundaries. They call it being understanding, supportive, or emotionally mature, but deep down, it's often avoidance. Avoidance of conflict, avoidance of rejection, avoidance of standing firm. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Empathy without boundaries is not strength, it's self-erasure. When you constantly put her emotions first, when you always adjust yourself to keep things smooth, you send a clear message. You don't trust your own value. And women feel that immediately. Many men believe that being endlessly understanding makes them good men. But attraction doesn't grow from goodness alone. It grows from self-respect. A man who has boundaries is a man who knows where he ends and where she begins. He doesn't absorb every emotion. He doesn't take responsibility for feelings that aren't his. He doesn't apologize for existing. This is where men need to wake up. You are not required to agree with everything to be mature. You are not required to stay silent to keep peace. You are not required to sacrifice your comfort to prove love. When you do those things, you may get appreciation, but you lose desire. Boundaries create polarity. They create tension. They show that you are grounded in your own world. A man with boundaries can say, "I hear you," without saying, "I'll change myself." That distinction is powerful. Empathy is still important, but it must be controlled empathy, not reactive empathy, not guilt-driven empathy. Controlled empathy says, "I understand you, but I still choose myself." That's not selfish. That's stable. Most men don't lose attraction because they're unkind. They lose it because they're undefined. They blur themselves until there's nothing solid left to desire. Wake up to this. Being emotionally strong means you can care without collapsing, listen without surrendering, and love without disappearing. When you learn that balance, you stop trying to be chosen and you start being respected. 5. Mystery creates desire. Availability destroys it. This is where many men unknowingly talk themselves out of attraction. Men are often told that transparency is everything. Share more, explain more, be open all the time. But constant emotional availability removes mystery, and mystery is one of the strongest drivers of desire. When a woman feels like she already knows everything about you, there's nothing left to explore. Mystery doesn't mean being fake or playing games, it means not giving full access to your inner world all at once. A man who reveals everything immediately leaves no emotional tension. He turns connection into information exchange. Desire fades when everything is laid out too neatly. Availability becomes destructive when it's automatic, when you're always reachable, always ready, always emotionally open. That signals that your life has no friction, no priorities, no depth beyond her. Women don't desire men who feel empty outside the relationship, they desire men who feel whole without it. Here's the part men need to hear clearly. If you are always available, you communicate that you are waiting, waiting for her attention, waiting for her validation, waiting for the relationship to define you. That waiting energy is unattractive because it removes polarity. Attraction needs movement, not stillness. Mystery comes from a man being anchored in his own life. His thoughts don't spill out uncontrollably. His emotions are real but measured. He doesn't rush to explain himself. Silence doesn't scare him. Space doesn't threaten him. Many men confuse mystery with distance. That's a mistake. Mystery is presence with restraint. You're there but not consuming. You care but you don't cling. You engage but you don't overexpose. That balance keeps curiosity alive. Men who destroy attraction don't do it by being bad. They do it by being too accessible, too eager, too emotionally transparent too early. They remove the chase before it even begins. If you want to be desired, stop treating availability like a virtue. Treat it like a resource. Use it intentionally. The less you try to prove closeness, the more naturally it forms. 6. Why women respect men who don't over-explain feelings. This is another area where men lose attraction without realizing it. Over-explaining emotions. Many men think that clarity builds connection, so they explain every feeling, every thought, every reaction. In reality, too much explanation signals insecurity, not emotional intelligence. A man who constantly explains how he feels is often seeking reassurance. He wants to be understood, validated, and approved of. But attraction doesn't grow from emotional justification. It grows from emotional certainty. When you know how you feel, you don't need to convince anyone of it. Women respect men who are emotionally clear, but not emotionally verbose. He can express himself without turning feelings into long speeches. He doesn't narrate his inner world. He states what matters and moves forward. That restraint communicates confidence. Over-explaining also removes leadership. When you explain everything, you put the other person in the position of judge. You wait to see if your feelings are acceptable. That dynamic quietly weakens attraction because it places her above you emotionally. Men who are grounded don't rush to clarify themselves. They allow misunderstanding to exist temporarily. They trust that their actions will speak louder than emotional breakdowns. That patience shows strength. This is something men need to wake up to. You don't have to be fully understood to be respected. Trying too hard to be understood often does the opposite. It makes you look unsure of yourself. A man who doesn't over-explain is not cold. He's contained. He knows that emotions are powerful, But they don't need constant translation. He lets moments breathe. He lets silence do some of the work. Relatable truth: many men talk too much when they feel anxious. They explain because they fear being misread or rejected. But that fear is exactly what women pick up on. Calm confidence is quieter. When you stop over-explaining, you shift the dynamic. You become centered. You become steady. And steadiness is deeply attractive. 7. Emotional control beats emotional exposure. This is the final lesson most men learn too late. Showing every emotion does not make you strong. It makes you unstable. Emotional exposure is often mistaken for authenticity, but authenticity without control quickly turns into emotional leakage. Many men believe that being open means sharing everything they feel in real time. The problem is that emotions are temporary. If you act on all of them, you appear reactive, and reactivity kills attraction. Women don't want to feel like they have to manage your emotional state or walk carefully around your moods. Emotional control doesn't mean suppression, it means choice. You decide what to express, when to express it, and how much to reveal. That choice signals maturity. A man who controls his emotions is predictable in a good way, steady, calm, and reliable under pressure. Here's where men need to be honest with themselves. Constant emotional exposure is often a form of emotional dumping. It puts weight on the relationship. Instead of connection, it creates obligation. Over time, attraction fades because desire doesn't grow in emotional chaos. Women are drawn to men who can feel deeply without being overwhelmed. A man who can sit with discomfort without needing immediate relief is powerful. He doesn't need to talk through everything. He processes internally and speaks intentionally. Many men lose attraction because they confuse vulnerability with emotional overflow. Vulnerability is selective, it's grounded, it's shared with purpose. Emotional overflow is uncontrolled and self-centered, even when it sounds sincere. When you master emotional control, you stop chasing closeness. You create it naturally. You become someone whose presence feels solid, not heavy, calm, not draining. This is the shift. Less explaining, less reacting, less emotional exposure, more grounding, more intention, more self-leadership. Men who understand this don't try to be desired. They are desired. Final conclusion: the uncomfortable truth. Here's the controversial truth most men are not ready to hear. The more emotionally available you are to women, the less they desire you. And most relationship advice has been lying to you about this. Not because women are cruel, not because emotions are bad, but because attraction does not grow from emotional sacrifice. It grows from emotional strength. Men have been trained to believe that being chosen means being endlessly patient, endlessly understanding, endlessly present. But what actually happens is this: the man who gives too much emotionally slowly disappears. His needs shrink, his boundaries fade, his identity dissolves. And once that happens, desire has nothing to attach itself to. Women don't lose attraction because a man is kind. They lose attraction because he stops being solid. He stops being centered in himself. He becomes reactive instead of grounded, available instead of intentional, emotional instead of controlled. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming self-led. The men who are desired aren't the ones who explain everything, fix everything, or feel everything out loud. They're the ones who can feel deeply without collapsing, who can care without chasing, who can love without losing themselves. If this made you uncomfortable, that's a good thing. Discomfort means you're seeing something clearly for the first time. I want you to comment your experiences below. Times when being too available cost you attraction, or when pulling back changed everything. I read them, I respond, and I reach out, because this conversation doesn't end with this video. It starts here, between men who are finally willing to be honest with themselves. And here's the cliffhanger to the next video. If emotional availability kills desire, then what kind of emotional presence actually makes women obsessed?